Last week, Donald Trump found out how hard it is to win votes without Vladimir Putin holding his hand along the way. Now let me ask you a question. In a Republican majority everything, how bad does your healthcare plan need to be to not get enough votes to pass even one House of Congress?
We're supposed to be doing this in order to make health insurance and health care more affordable. Unfortunately, this legislation, this massive Republican welfare plan, does not do that. According to the Congressional Budget Office and the Joint Committee on Taxation, health insurance premiums, if this Republican health care plan passes, will go up 15 to 20% over the next 2 years.
To put in perspective, this is the same Republican Party that banded together and, albeit reluctantly, supported someone as awful as Donald Trump. So with some loose math here, we can reasonably conclude that TrumpCare is so bad, it's worse than Donald Trump. Side note, maybe they should have called it TrumpCare. Get it? Because they tried and... okay, never mind. If you can't whip a red Congress into voting for a toxic healthcare plan that was widely criticized by the same people who spent their entire congressional terms shitting on the existing healthcare law, who voted to repeal it more than 50 times, you probably have to accept defeat. Which is exactly what Trump's doing at the moment by pointing his tiny fingers at everyone but himself.
We had no Democrat support. We had no votes from the Democrats.
Yeah, no shit.
A lot of people don't realize how good our bill was because they were viewing phase one.
No, the reality is, Donald, that people realized exactly how shitty your bill was, that even the staunchest Republicans, like the members of the Freedom Caucus, they couldn't get behind it. And also, Don, this isn't fucking Game of Thrones. You can't just leave legislation on a cliffhanger like what will happen to Janet's leukemia medicine. Tune in next week to find out. But Republicans did try their best. They even went harder with the cutbacks in an effort to appease the staunches of the right. But when the overwhelming benefits of your new, supposedly better healthcare plan favor citizens making $200,000 or more, and I mean overwhelming, like 70% of cuts benefited just the top 5% of Americans, when you ran on a platform that talked about helping the rest of the country, you might need to reconsider your priorities. I'm gonna take a brief moment here to step back and talk about Donald Trump's art of the deal. This is a quote from the book. "You can't con people, at least not for long. You can create excitement, you can do wonderful promotion and get all kinds of press, and you can throw in a little hyperbole. But if you don't deliver the goods, people will eventually catch on." But aside from that, perhaps the irony here is that more than 55 million Americans foolishly believed a billionaire reality TV man-child born with a silver spoon in his mouth truly gave a fuck about the plight of the common man. That is precisely the crux of the problem. Republicans consistently vote against their self-interest, and voting with your gut has never had more severe consequences than right here and right now. But they're not just hurting themselves. There are so many decent, hardworking Americans, both Republican and Democrat, who would have been hurt by this bill. Rich people are always going to be able to pay for healthcare. Universal coverage is intended to protect those who cannot. Even Trump knows that's the case.
Nobody's going to be dying on the street if I'm president.
So he understands that this point matters, at least when he's trying to con people into voting for him. Yet his healthcare proposal was the exact opposite. So the core problem is that this healthcare bill emerged from a right-wing mentality that everyone should be equal as long as it benefits the wealthy, which is when the wealthy get constant subsidies from the government, and then if there's anything left over, the poor can pick through the scraps. If you really believe the United States is the greatest country on earth, which I do, that's why I'm here, then we should be able to create a healthcare system where less fortunate citizens don't have to worry about dying from completely treatable conditions. You know how many Americans die annually at the hands of foreign-born terrorists? 1. Do you know how many die from heart disease? Around 650,000. So you tell me why we're prioritizing plans to combat the boogeyman that is Muslims when we're roughly 5,500 times more likely to die by something that can be prevented with affordable healthcare. An American who needlessly dies on our soil is the symptom of an even more profound injustice than an American soldier who dies abroad. And speaking of injustices and Republicans' sheer inability to see the clear hypocrisy, let's talk about unreasonably in-shape frat boy Paul Ryan and his story. Paul Ryan literally gets a hard-on every time he talks about gutting Medicaid.
Sending it back to the states, capping its growth rate. We've been dreaming of this since I've been around, since you and I were drinking at a keg.
Way before his keg drinking days, when Ryan was 15 years old, his dad died from alcoholism. Ryan and his family were fortunate enough to receive his father's Social Security survivor's benefits. Without these benefits, Ryan wouldn't have gone to college. But this is a perfect example of a Republican congressman actively trying to close the door behind him. It was great when he needed it, but fuck all the other people who desperately need coverage now.
Ryan needs to step down as Speaker of the House.
But I guess one fortunate consequence of this dead bill, aside from the obvious fact that millions of Americans will remain having health care, is that Paul Ryan now knows what Ronda Rousey feels like after getting knocked the fuck out on national television. Hey Paul, how does it feel to be the new Chris Christie? Must sting. I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown.